What do people think about a woman who cheats? What drives a woman who is already married with a family to seek love elsewhere? Is it because her husband is emotionally distant, neglecting her needs and failing to show her the love and care she deserves? Or is it that her sexual desires are unmet, prompting her to seek affection from someone else? Infidelity is an issue that always stirs heated debate in society, and it continues to rise, with no sign of slowing down. You may find this hard to believe, but I want to share my story with you. It may seem unbelievable, but I'm sure there are many others living similar lives. The only difference is whether they can keep their emotions in check or not. My name is Quink. I'm 28 years old and work as an obstetrician. I run my own ultrasound clinic, which is always full of patients. My career is thriving, and I'm proud of everything I've achieved. I consider myself an attractive, confident woman standing at the threshold of success. My husband Hugh is a well-known actor and model. He is handsome, famous, and successful. Everyone around me says that I'm lucky, both in my career and my marriage. From the outside, it seems like everything is perfect, but deep inside, there is a sadness that I struggle to articulate, a sadness that no one can see. You see, I'm not fulfilled in my marriage. I'm not truly happy. I know what you're thinking. Perhaps you're assuming that I'm just another woman with high sexual needs, right? But hear me out and try to put yourself in my shoes. It's not what you think. My husband, I sigh. I didn't mean it like that, Mum. Please don't be upset. Look, I even brought you a gift. I take out a small box, carefully wrapped. I hand it over to her. She hesitates, then accepts it. Her anger fades, if only a little. She goes to her room, and I stay on the couch waiting for my husband. Time passes, but he still doesn't come. It's been almost an hour. I start missing him terribly, longing for him to come back. But when he finally does, he isn't excited to see me. He simply walks in, gets in bed, and lies next to me. He doesn't hug me. He doesn't kiss me. He's so detached. It feels like a stranger is lying next to me. The silence in the room grows louder with every passing minute. I try to sleep but can't. It's been so long since we've shared this kind of closeness, and I miss him desperately. I reach out, touching him gently. Maybe this will wake him up. But he stays asleep. I give him a gentle push, hoping for a response. Still nothing. His breathing is steady and he's deep in sleep. I lay there, frustrated, unable to sleep. After 3 months apart, this is all we do now. Just sleep beside each other without saying a word. It's heartbreaking. Suddenly, something changes. In a moment of vulnerability, I decide to reach out, to touch him in a way I used to. Just as my hand moves, I feel him stir. He wakes up, gets out of bed, and heads to the bathroom. He doesn't even glance at me, as if I'm invisible. I'm left there, cold, lying alone in the dark. I cannot understand. Why is he like this? Why does he seem so distant? We've been through so much together. Why does he act like I don't matter anymore? I lay there, tossing and turning, my mind racing with doubt. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he's found someone else. The thought consumes me. The next day, I see a text message from him. I can't resist. I open it. It's from his co-star, Quinn Hoa. They've been texting back and forth. I don't know why it hurts, but it does. These aren't just casual messages. There's an intimacy between them. They work together and they share so much. I feel jealous, betrayed even. Why does she get his attention while I'm left here, alone and forgotten? For the next 3 days, I can't stop thinking about it. My anxiety builds. I can't focus at work. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Finally, I decide I need to confront this. I drive to the filming location where he's shooting. It's not far, just a short drive away. I arrive at the set and watch from a distance. There, I see him. He's filming a scene with Quinn Hoa. They are supposed to be acting, but it looks so real. They kiss, passionately. My heart breaks. I can't take it anymore. I rush back to the car, tears streaming down my face. What is happening to us? When he finally comes home that night, we barely talk. We're both exhausted. He goes to bed without saying a word. I, on the other hand, can't sleep. The next morning, after breakfast, he leaves again for another filming session. I feel the weight of his absence. My mother-in-law is concerned. She sighs. Your son works so hard. I hope he doesn't get sick. But I can't bring myself to care about his work. I reply, Mum, he's fine. He's motivated. He enjoys what he does. Don't worry about him. She scoffs at me. What do you know? Maybe you're just jealous. Her words sting, but I don't let it show. I try to stay calm, but she's relentless. Jealous! I snap. Why would I be jealous? Each of us has our own job. I'm not the one making millions, but I'm happy with what I do. But Mum isn't listening. Don't act like you're not jealous. You're just a small-time doctor, while your husband is making fortunes in the film industry. I feel the heat rise in my chest. I'm proud of my work, and I'm proud of my husband, even if he doesn't appreciate me anymore. Mum narrows her eyes, looking at me with disdain. Don't fool yourself. I know exactly what you're up to. You're upset because you're not as successful as him. Admit it. I stand up, frustrated beyond belief. I'm not upset about success. I'm upset because he's distant, because he doesn't care about me like he used to. But my mother-in-law isn't listening. She continues, You're just a small-time doctor. What do you know about the pressures of the film industry? Her words cut me deeply, but I refuse to let her see how much it hurts. You don't know me, Mom, I reply. I work hard to take care of this family. Every meal, every bill, every little thing, it's all me, not him. He's too busy filming to even notice what's happening in our own house. Her eyes narrow in disbelief. So you're telling me you're the one providing for this family? And what's your husband doing? Playing around with other women. I roll my eyes, exasperated. You think I'm lying? You think I'm jealous? You want the truth? I'm just tired of being invisible in my own marriage. At this point, I've had enough. I walk away, not wanting to argue anymore. I'm tired of the constant tension, tired of trying to prove myself. But as I step into the living room, I hear her on the phone. She's talking to my husband. And everything inside me freezes. I don't want to hear what she's saying, I don't want to know. But I can't help it. The conversation continues and I hear bits and pieces. She's telling him everything I've been feeling. But I can't bring myself to confront her. I'm too tired of fighting, too tired of trying to make everything work. I just hope that somehow he'll notice me again, but deep down, I'm not sure if he will. About your wife, she's calculating every penny with your mother, you know. This was the voice of my mother-in-law, who seemed to speak directly to me, but in a way that felt like a knife twisting in my heart. I only have you, my son. Why is your wife speaking to me like this? What am I supposed to do now? I'm getting old, I'm forgetful, and now she's treating me like this. How am I supposed to cope? Tears were already streaming down her face as she spoke. And I, standing there, listened in disbelief, unable to comprehend what was unfolding in front of me. Can't you just understand me? Can't you just feel for me? What am I supposed to do? Where do I go from here? The more she spoke, the more I felt like I was drowning in her words. After a long period of sobbing and blaming me for everything, my mother-in-law suddenly stopped. She wiped her tears and without any emotion, continued as if nothing had happened. How can someone act so well? It's almost frightening. That was when my phone rang. I knew immediately it was my husband. I braced myself for what was coming. With everything my mother-in-law had said, I could already imagine the accusations he would throw my way. I sighed deeply before answering. Hello? His voice came through the phone, harsh and accusatory. What kind of wife are you, Quinn-Anne? You're the only one who can take care of my mother. She's getting old, and you're pushing her away like this? Do you think she has anyone else to rely on? He continued to lash out. I'm not there to see it, but I know exactly what's going on. You're my wife, Quinn. You should be supporting my mother. If you can't, then maybe we need to reconsider things between us. His words were like a cold shower to me, waking me from the fog I had been in. Am I with the wrong person? I thought to myself. Even though I was hurt by his accusations, I kept calm. You're misunderstanding me, I said gently, trying to explain. I've never treated your mother badly. Please don't believe everything she says. Can't you see the situation with your own eyes? But he wasn't hearing it. No, Quinn. I don't want to discuss this any further. I'm busy. Just remember one thing. There's always another wife, but a mother. You only have one. Do you understand me? That was the moment I realised the truth. His loyalty was with his mother, no matter what. Even when he knew what was right or wrong, his mother's side was always the side he would take. I felt a deep sense of disappointment. Was I really this foolish to have married someone who would always choose someone else over me? I sat there in silence after he hung up, reflecting on how things had turned out. Since the day I married him, he had always stood by his mother, no matter how wrong she was. He would always defend her, no matter the situation. And I felt so alone in this marriage. In my frustration, I sent him a message. "Do you want a divorce?" He replied immediately, without hesitation. "It's up to you." Reading his words felt like a dagger in my heart. I didn't cry, but I felt empty, like all hope had left me. What was I supposed to do now? I walked up to my room feeling lost. I changed into a tight, glamorous dress, put on makeup, and left the house. I needed a break, something to numb the pain. I went to a fancy bar, ordered a bottle of wine, and sat there alone, drowning my sorrows in alcohol. As I drank, I couldn't help but notice the crowd around me. They were all wealthy, mostly young men. I felt out of place, but at that moment I didn't care. I wanted to forget everything. I was already tipsy when a young man came over to sit beside me. He smiled and said, "Hey, are you drinking alone?" Feeling down? He was tall, handsome, and I couldn't help but smile back, a little distracted by his presence. "Yeah, a little sad," I replied, "but I'm fine, thanks. Are you here alone too?" He chuckled and nodded. "I'm here alone, but now I'm with you." I didn't care much about his name or background. I just needed someone to talk to. So we began drinking together. I wasn't thinking clearly, and I didn't care to know much more about him. Then, in a low voice, he asked, "Would you like to have a one-night affair with me?" His words caught me off guard, but my mind immediately raced. It's been so long since I felt any excitement, I thought. Maybe a one-night affair could fill this emptiness inside me. Without much hesitation, I nodded. "All right, let's do it." He leaned in close, whispering in my ear, "Then let's go right now, baby." I agreed. But when we got to the hotel, things didn't go as I expected. He didn't take the time to be affectionate or romantic. No kissing, no touching. It was like a business transaction, and I found myself completely unsatisfied. I felt disappointed, empty, and unsatisfied. This wasn't what I needed. This wasn't the solution. By the time I sobered up, I felt guilty. What am I doing? What have I become? I thought. I immediately paid for the hotel and left, heading back home. I promised myself that I would never make that mistake again. I had to face the reality that men like him were all the same, empty, shallow. No one could fill the void inside me but myself. I made a promise to myself. From now on, I would remain content by my husband's side and never think about any other man again. I took the first step to reconcile with him. I bought fruits and fresh juice and personally delivered them to the film set for him and the crew. But every time I went to visit him at the set, something strange happened. I always seemed to catch him filming intimate scenes with his female co-star. This time, it was a scene in the bathroom. My husband was in just his underwear, his chest bare, while his co-star, Quinn Howard, wore a sizzling bikini. Oh my God, the jealousy within me surged, and my whole body felt like it was on fire. I had to summon all my courage to avoid losing control. I forced myself to count from 1 to 100 just to calm down. Eventually my jealousy cooled off, and I smiled as I walked over to my husband. Gently, I asked, "Are you tired, my love?" His response was cold and indifferent. "Why come here?" "What are you bothering me for?" I was there to visit him, and had even brought food for him and the crew to share, but his thoughtless reply made the smile on my face fade immediately. He made me feel so embarrassed in front of the entire crew, but thankfully the scriptwriter, who was nearby, spoke up, defending me. "You? What's wrong with you? Your wife is so thoughtful, and you speak to her like that." Hugh stayed silent, but the scriptwriter didn't stop there. She handed out the fruits to everyone, and then turned back to me, speaking kindly. "Thank you so much for the food, my dear. Don't let your husband's careless words bother you. He may be rough around the edges, but his heart is good, right?" I smiled, feeling a little comforted. "Yes, you're right," she continued. "If you're not in a rush, why don't you stay and chat for a while?" Once we finish shooting, let's all go out for a meal together. I hesitated. I feel a bit shy, actually. She laughed. Shy? Why? Your husband is right here with us. Don't be shy. Sit with us. All right then, I agreed. I'll stay for a while. We'll talk later. The whole crew seemed so warm and friendly, and I enjoyed the time there. But Hugh and Hoa were still cold toward me. Hoa looked awkward, and there was one scene where she had to redo a take with Jat 10 times because of her clumsiness. Meanwhile, Hugh sat there, ignoring me. Even though I was sitting beside him, he was glued to his phone, pretending not to notice me. But I stayed there on purpose, to make sure the third party knew that Hugh was already married. Still, Hoa kept pushing boundaries. She casually draped her arm over my husband's shoulder when the crew was about to head out for dinner. That was the last straw for me. Without thinking, I grabbed Hugh's arm and pulled him toward me. Is your car over there, my love? I asked. As soon as I held his hand, Hoa immediately spoke up, trying to claim him. Hugh, don't you remember? You promised to drive me home. Hugh turned around and casually said, Oh, I forgot. Sorry about that. Then he turned to me and said, You can drive yourself home, right? I'll go with Hoa. I was furious. I'm your wife! You're supposed to drive your wife, not her! I snapped. Without hesitation, Hoa handed him the car keys, smiling smugly. Hugh took them and walked away, leaving me standing there alone and humiliated. Hoa just stood there, smirking, clearly enjoying my discomfort. You know, your husband doesn't like to ride in the car with you, she taunted. He prefers to go with me. You better go home. Don't follow us. Her words stung, but I couldn't lose my temper in front of the crew. I calmly said, Don't be so shameless. Hugh is married and you should respect that. Stop being so forward. She retorted, Are you scared of losing your husband? If you're insecure, maybe you should just get a divorce. He's probably lost interest in you already. My anger boiled over. How can you be so proud of breaking up someone else's marriage? I shot back. You think what you're doing is something to be proud of? Ho sneered. Of course, I'm proud. I'll take whatever I want. You can't stop me. I was beyond enraged, but I took a deep breath and warned, Stay away from my husband. If you don't, you'll regret it. You'll pay the price for what you're doing. She laughed scornfully. What are you going to do about it? You can't scare me. I'm not afraid of you. My hands clenched into fists. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to punch her, but I couldn't. Instead, I shot back. You're just a failed actress. What's a woman like you doing stealing someone's husband? Is that your idea of success? Hor gave me a sly grin and whispered in my ear. Hugh told me he's bored of you. He finds you dull, unexciting. He's not satisfied with you at all. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. My rage flared and I almost lost control. But just then the crew started to leave, and I had to hold myself back. Hoa swaggered off toward Hugh, and he drove her away in his car, not even acknowledging me. I was left standing there, humiliated and heartbroken. Anger surged through me. I couldn't let her get away with it. I jumped into my car and followed them. We were driving behind their car, and when we stopped at a red light, Hoa shot me a provocative look, clearly trying to provoke me. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had a plan. I pressed the accelerator and closed the gap between our cars. When the light turned green, I slammed my car into the back of their vehicle. Their car hit mine with a loud bang, sending a jolt through my body. My car's front end was damaged, but theirs was even worse, the rear end completely crumpled. In a situation like this, if their car broke down, I wouldn't stop. No way. I would push forward. I wanted them to see that I was ready to go to any lengths, ready to risk everything, ready to face death with them. I stepped on the gas again, ramming into their car once more. Hugh and Hua were in complete panic. They slammed on their brakes and pulled over, both of them sticking their heads out of the window to shout at me. Quinn, are you insane? Hugh screamed. You're trying to kill us, aren't you? I rolled down my window, stuck my head out, and coolly responded, Don't worry, Hugh. Even if I die, I'll take you down with me. After all, we're married. We live and die together, right? Isn't that how it's supposed to be? He looked at me in shock. Quinn, you're crazy. Please, snap out of it. I smiled, a grim smile that spoke of pain and desperation, and then hit the gas again. The sound of metal crunching echoed in the night air as I slammed into their car yet again. This time, their license plate flew off and landed on the ground. My husband and Hoa, terrified, jumped out of the car and ran away. Hoa didn't even have time to shut the door properly before I floored the accelerator again, ramming straight into the side of her car. The door crumpled under the impact, pieces of it falling to the ground. My husband and the other woman ran, abandoning the scene. I stayed behind, alone with 2 wrecked cars. The people nearby quickly called the police. It didn't take long before I was handcuffed and led away by the officers for disturbing the peace and destroying property. But even in that moment, I wasn't afraid, far from it. I felt a strange satisfaction. My husband and Hoa were both famous. If the details of their affair got out, it would ruin them. Me? It wouldn't matter. I was calm. I wasn't worried. I knew the truth, and that was all I needed. As I waited at the station, I began to wonder, was I going to have to pay for all the damages? After all, Hoa's car was severely damaged. But the longer I waited, the more something felt off. I sat there, confused, not sure why they hadn't questioned me yet. They didn't even ask for my statement. It felt strange. When one of the officers finally walked in, I immediately asked, "What's going on? Am I going to be fined or something? I can't just sit here like this." The officer calmly replied, "Give me a moment. I'm just finishing up some paperwork. We'll get to you soon." I sat there, waiting, the tension in the air growing heavier by the second. Finally he returned. "You're not going to be fined," he said softly. "Just sign this commitment form saying you won't do this again and you'll be free to go home." I blinked. "Wait, what? You mean no fine? No punishment?" "Number nothing to pay. Just sign the paper and you're done." I was stunned. I couldn't understand it. After everything I'd done, deliberately ramming Hoa's car and causing such damage, why was I being let off without paying a dime? I had expected to face serious consequences. This made no sense. "Are you sure?" I asked the officer again, my voice trembling with disbelief. "There's no fine? No compensation? Am I misunderstanding something?" "No, you're not misunderstanding," he replied calmly. "Just sign the paper, and you'll be free to go." I couldn't believe it. How was this possible? My mind raced. Had my husband paid off the police? Had he and Hoa covered up the situation because of their fame? It seemed too convenient. Suddenly, I realised that my husband must have taken care of everything behind the scenes. He and Hoa didn't want their affair getting exposed. It would ruin both of their careers. The officer didn't confirm it, but I could see it in his eyes. He didn't want to get involved in this mess. So I signed the paper, confused and a little suspicious. I didn't trust the situation, but there was nothing I could do. I left the police station, my mind still spinning with questions. When I arrived home, my mother-in-law was waiting for me. The moment she saw me, she started yelling. "Did you cause this mess? Is it true? You've ruined everything, haven't you? Do you even think before you act?" I just stood there, feeling defeated. How could she not understand? How could she continue to defend her son like this? "You're the one who's out of your mind," I replied, my voice shaky but firm. "You only care about you. What about me? What about your daughter-in-law? Am I just some animal to you?" She glared at me, her eyes full of rage. "You're worse than an animal. You're a disgrace. If anything happens to my son, I'll make you pay for it." I let out a deep sigh. "You don't even know the full story, do you? Do you know why I did what I did? Why I rammed their car?" She didn't respond, just continued to rant about how I was irresponsible, how I was selfish. I pressed on. "You really don't know, do you? Hugh and Hoa. He's been seeing her for over 3 months now. He hasn't even paid attention to me. And she's the one who told me." My mother-in-law's face froze. "You're just talking nonsense. They're just colleagues. They're not in a relationship." "No, they're more than that. They've been seeing each other behind my back." She refused to believe me, calling me childish and immature. I couldn't stand it anymore. "How could you defend him like this? No man who truly loves his wife would ignore her for months and run off with someone else." She snapped back. "You're just making up stories. Forget about it and go clean the house. Prepare dinner." I was done. I couldn't take her side anymore. I went upstairs, locked myself in my room and sank into my thoughts. Was divorce the only way out of this? It wasn't long before Hugh came home, looking exhausted. I could see the guilt in his eyes, but he said nothing. He placed a divorce paper on the table and said, "We need to talk." I felt my heart break as I stared at the paper. Was this really the end? Sign the divorce papers. Just leave. I felt utterly exhausted. "I'm so tired of this with you," I bitterly said. "You've been cheating on me for so long. When you come home, you're always tired, always looking for an excuse to escape. You want a divorce so you can be free to be with your mistress, don't you?" I was devastated. "You're a despicable person, Hugh. Sign the papers and stop making excuses. The things you've done today are worse than the affair I've had." "I've stopped looking into it," I continued, trying to keep my composure. "So don't say another word. Don't try to make this my fault." "Everything I've done is because of you," I cried. "If you hadn't abandoned me, if you had cared for me, if she hadn't provoked me and called me a failure, I would never have done this." My voice cracked. "Do you even understand that? Do you? I don't want to argue with you anymore," I said with finality. "Just sign the divorce papers, please." And that was it. I signed. I knew it was over. Our marriage, built on promises and trust, was shattered. But what was the true cause of all this? Was it really because Hugh had an affair, or was it because I didn't know how to keep my husband to protect my happiness? I signed my name on the divorce papers, handing them to Hugh. He took the papers, left the house, and as he walked away, it felt like my whole world was slipping away. I wanted to scream to stop him, but I couldn't. It was truly over. As Hugh passed through the living room, he ran into his mother. "Where are you going, son? It's so late," she asked. "Mum, go to bed. I'll be back in a few days," Hugh replied. "Wait a minute," his mother said, eyeing the papers in his hand. "This is the divorce settlement, isn't it? Is it final?" "Yes, it is," Hugh answered quietly. His mother pressed further, her voice soft but full of concern. "So, about this other woman, Hoa, is that really true?" Hugh nodded. "Yes, Mum, it's true." His mother sighed, looking at him with a mix of disappointment and worry. "Are you sure? Are you sure you want this, Hugh?" "I've made my decision," he replied, his tone cold, detached. "Well then, go ahead," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But remember, you might regret this later." Hugh didn't respond. He turned and quickly left the house, heading straight to Hoya's place, choosing to be with her instead of his wife. He had made up his mind to start a new life. The next day, I made up my mind as well. I packed up my things and moved into the clinic where I worked. I didn't want to go back to my parents' house. I had to be strong. They would soon learn about the divorce. During this time, staying at the clinic was the best option. I packed up my things, and my mother-in-law stopped me. "Where are you going?" she asked sharply. "I've signed the divorce papers, so I'm leaving. I'm going to live at the clinic," I replied calmly. "You've signed, huh?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Well, just know that you've closed the door behind you. There's no turning back. Are you sure about this?" I let out a small laugh, though it was full of bitterness. "Just last night, you cursed me like an enemy. And now you're telling me this? What do you want me to say?" "I tried to hold on," I said, my voice breaking. "But it's him who wanted the divorce. He made his choice." Her face fell. She said nothing more. She just sighed and returned to her room, leaving me to pack up and leave. In the first few days at the clinic, I felt completely lost and alone. When work was over, everyone else went home. And there I was, sitting in the emptiness of the clinic, overwhelmed with sadness. I had no idea how to deal with the pain. This was the lowest point in my life, and I didn't know how I would get through it. The day of the divorce court arrived, and I took one last look at Hugh. I held his image in my mind, trying to memorize every detail. It was the last time I would see him. We never had children, so everything ended quickly. After the divorce, there was no reason for us to meet again, but even then, it hurt so much to let him go. Hugh, the man I once loved, was walking away. Then Hoa appeared, standing with Hugh. When she saw me, she smiled smugly. "So you're the one who lost, Quinn. He's with me now." I looked at her, my heart heavy with grief. This isn't a game of winners and losers. You've stolen my husband. Is that really what makes you happy? Yes, it does, Hoa replied, her smile widening. It feels so good to have what you had. I just stared at her in silence, my heart breaking further. Well, enjoy him, I said softly. But I hope you treat him better than I did. Hoa didn't respond. She just continued smiling, and Hugh walked away with her arm in arm. It was so painful to watch. Each step they took together felt like a knife in my chest. I couldn't even cry anymore. The pain was so deep, I was numb. But as I stood there, I realised something. It was over. I couldn't change anything. The time had come for me to move forward, to find strength within myself. I couldn't let others see my weakness. I had to focus on work and move on from this heartbreak. I threw myself into my work, trying to numb the pain by staying busy. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Time passed quickly, and soon it had been half a year since the divorce. One day, during a holiday, I went on a trip with some friends to the beach. As I watched them laughing, having fun with their husbands, I felt an overwhelming sadness. I remembered the days when Hugh and I were newlyweds, going on trips with our friends. Everyone used to say he was the most handsome guy in the group, and we had all made plans to return to the beach the next year. But now, everything had changed. My husband was gone, and I was alone. I forced a smile for my friends, but inside I was dying. They told me I'd find someone new soon, someone to fill the empty space in my life. They encouraged me to move on, but I couldn't help but feel so out of place. As they played in the water, I sat on the shore, drinking coconut water, feeling like an outsider. Then, something unexpected happened. As I looked around, I saw Hoa sitting with a man I didn't recognise. I looked for Hugh, but didn't see him anywhere. Were they together now? Were they on this trip with me? And then I realised something that made my heart drop. Hugh and Hoa weren't staying in the same hotel as me. They were in a room on the 3rd floor while I was on the 2nd. I saw them holding hands in the hotel restaurant, laughing, clearly in love. At that moment, I couldn't help but feel a strange satisfaction. After all, I had been the one left behind, but now it was clear that Hugh had been betrayed as well. The man I had once loved had been deceived by the woman he thought he was going to build a future with. As I saw Hoa and her companion walk into a room together, I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures. I wasn't going to confront them. After all, I had no reason to. My marriage to Hugh was over, and he was free to do as he wished. It was one of those moments where destiny played its hand in the most unexpected way. I was simply out for a walk on the beach, enjoying the sea breeze, when I saw her. There, standing in front of me, was Hoa, my ex-husband's new partner. What were the chances? And just as fate would have it, she was not alone. The man she was with wrapped his arms around her, kissing her passionately, right in front of me. At that moment, I didn't feel disgusted or upset. In fact, I was strangely calm. I approached them, and with a slightly hesitant tone, I asked, "Isn't that you, Hoa?" "I thought so. What are you doing here?" Hoa immediately pushed the man away, a look of guilt flashing across her face. "Yes, it's me." "What's going on? What brings you here?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I couldn't help myself. "Is he your boyfriend?" I asked, a bit too bluntly. The man nodded and said, "Yes, I'm Hoa's boyfriend." "Is there a problem?" I was silent for a moment. Then I spoke, as if all the hurt I'd kept hidden for so long had finally found its voice. "So you've left my ex-husband for this guy?" I said, with a bitter smile. "You left him for someone else? How long has it been? A few months, maybe? Seems like karma's caught up with him sooner than expected, huh?" Hoa stammered, clearly taken aback. She didn't seem to know how to respond. "What are you talking about? I've never been with your ex-husband, he's not my type," she muttered, avoiding eye contact. I raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to pretend, Hoa. You don't owe me any explanation, but honestly, I'm not upset anymore. I'm done with my ex. What happens between you and him, that's not my concern." And with that, I turned and walked away. On the outside, I told myself I didn't care about my ex-husband anymore, but deep down, a storm of emotions was brewing. What was he up to these days? Did Hoa and her new boyfriend have a future together? Or had they already split? I tried to shake the thoughts away but couldn't help it. My heart still clung to him. Days passed. After the holiday, I returned to work at my clinic. I focused on my patients, but in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about my ex-husband. The encounter with Hoa kept replaying in my mind. Had I truly gotten over him? It wasn't until a few days later that I made up my mind. I needed to know. So I picked up my phone and dialed his number. "Hello, Hugh?" "It's me, Quinn," I said, my heart racing. "I've been thinking. I wanted to check in on you. Could we meet up for a coffee sometime?" "Sure, no problem," he replied. "How about our old spot? Same time?" I agreed, and just like that, I found myself preparing to meet him. I stood in front of the mirror, putting on makeup, wearing the white dress he had given me all those years ago. I didn't know why, but I wanted to look my best for him. As I walked to the cafe, my mind raced. The place we were meeting at held so many memories. This was where we first met, where we spent countless afternoons talking and laughing. It was where he had proposed to me. I hadn't been back since our divorce, and now, walking into the cafe, I was overwhelmed by the flood of emotions that hit me. I waited, my hands trembling slightly as the minutes ticked by. Was he still the same? Would he recognise the old feelings we once had? At exactly 2 p.m, he walked in. He looked different, thinner, darker. He smiled awkwardly. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "I didn't keep you waiting too long, did I?" I smiled softly. "No, not at all," I replied. We sat down and began talking. He told me about his life, how things had changed for him since we parted ways. But when I looked at him, I realised that despite everything I still cared, more than I cared to admit. "So how's Hoa?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though a knot formed in my stomach. He paused. His face grew serious. "I'm still with her, but we're getting married at the end of the year." He said it with an air of finality, almost as if expecting me to be happy for him. "That's great," I said, with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "I'm happy for you both." We continued talking, reminiscing about the good old days, laughing about the little things. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the thought of Hoa and her new boyfriend. "By the way," I asked, my voice betraying a hint of curiosity, "do you still love her?" He shrugged. "I do, but why do you ask?" I hesitated before answering. "I just wanted to know how you're doing. If you're really happy." His gaze softened. "I am. Are you seeing anyone now?" he asked, genuinely curious. "No," I replied quickly. "Still single. Not sure if I'm ready for a relationship just yet." The conversation drifted to lighter topics, but I couldn't help feeling like there was something unresolved between us. Then I decided to bring up what had been on my mind ever since that day at the beach. "Actually," I began, "I ran into Hoa the other day while I was at the beach. She was with another man, and they seemed pretty close." His face immediately darkened. "Hoa!" he muttered. "She was with another guy?" I nodded, pulling out my phone to show him the photos I'd taken. Hoa and the man she was with were clearly more than friends. They were intimate, kissing each other, laughing, and enjoying their time together. Is this your boyfriend?" I asked, showing him the pictures. Hugh's face turned white. He muttered under his breath, "That bastard! She's still seeing him." I could see the hurt in his eyes, and suddenly everything became so clear. Hoa had been lying to him all along. She had told him she was going to her hometown for a family gathering, but in reality, she had gone to the beach with her lover. "So you've been cheated on?" I asked, not sure how to feel. His face was a mix of shock and anger. She said it was over between them, that she was done with him, but I guess that was just a lie. He clenched his fists. "She's been seeing him behind my back." I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for him, even though we had been through our own painful separation. "I'm sorry, Hugh," I said softly. "I didn't mean to bring this up." He stood up abruptly. "I need to go. I need to talk to her." As he left, I sat there, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. Yes, I had moved on, but seeing Hugh like this, it brought back so many memories. I quickly sent him a message. "If you're tired of everything, you can always come back to me. I still care about you." I waited for a response, but there was nothing. Maybe he wasn't ready, or maybe he still needed time. Hours later, I learned that Hugh had gone back to their apartment intending to confront Hoa. His suspicions had been correct. Hoa had been secretly seeing another man, even after everything they'd been through. Hugh wasn't sure how to feel, but he knew one thing for sure: he would confront her. And as I sat there, I couldn't help but wonder how much more betrayal he would endure before he finally walked away for good. On his way back home, Heo felt anxious. He knew that the person Hoa was seeing behind his back was Tan, the model who lived near their apartment complex. He had always been suspicious, and now that he was away, he was certain Tan and Hoa would be together when he wasn't around. The more he thought about it, the angrier and more frustrated he became. When he arrived at the apartment complex, Heo stood outside the door and rang the doorbell. Hoa was inside, taking a shower, while Tan, dressed only in his underwear, was lounging on the couch. When he heard the doorbell, Tan asked, "Honey, did you order the chicken rice?" "Yes," Hoa replied. "Please let them deliver it. The money is in my wallet." "Okay," Tan said, taking the money and heading to the door. He was surprised to see Heo standing there. Heo clenched his teeth. "What the hell are you doing here?" Tan shot back. "I'm the one who should be asking you that. You and Hoa broke up, didn't you? Why are you still here, bothering her?" With anger boiling inside him, Heo gritted his teeth and said, "Who told you we broke up? We didn't. I just left for a while, and as soon as I'm gone, you think it's okay to bring her here? You scum!" Heo lunged at Tan, throwing a punch, but Tan wasn't someone who would back down easily. He punched back, and the two of them began fighting right at the doorstep. Hoa, just finishing her shower, wrapped herself in a towel and came out to see the chaos. "What's going on? Why is it so noisy?" Heo yelled at her. "So this is how you've been lying to me for 3 months? You're both dead today." Hoa's face went pale when she saw Heo. "Heo, you're filming outside, right? If I hadn't come back, would you have kept deceiving me?" Hoa stammered. Heo shouted, "Get out! Both of you, get out of my house!" After landing a punch that made Tan bleed from his nose, Heo grabbed Hoa by the hair and threw both of them out of the apartment. He walked inside, opened the closet, and threw Hoa's clothes and shoes out the door. His rage was barely under control as he fought to keep himself from losing it completely. Heo was someone who valued tradition and was extremely patriarchal. He hated women who were unfaithful, and this betrayal was something he couldn't overlook. The first time Hoa had lied to him, he had brushed it off, mainly because he had just divorced his wife and didn't want to be seen as a failure. But now, after everything, Hoa had been cheating on him for 3 months and he had no idea. It hurt him deeply. Hoa, on the other hand, didn't seem to care. She quickly packed her things and left the apartment. Heo felt humiliated, but instead of confronting the pain, he chose to drown himself in alcohol. He started drinking heavily and neglected his work. The film crew called him, but he ignored their calls, and his absence caused delays on set. How could he focus on filming when he was lost in a drunken haze? A week passed, and on one particular day, I couldn't help but wonder about my ex-husband. I hadn't heard from him, and I was curious if he and Hoa were doing well, or if he was okay. I had left my phone on, waiting for a message. Another day passed, and I stared at my phone, letting out a sigh. I was beginning to miss him. Finally, I got a call from Heo. My heart raced when I saw his name on the screen. I quickly answered. "Hello?" Heo's voice slurred. "What are you doing? Can you come over here? Please?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'm coming right now." I quickly changed my clothes and rushed over to his place. I had been waiting for this moment for so long, and now that it was finally here, I couldn't contain my excitement. When I arrived at the apartment, the sight that greeted me was shocking. Heo was sprawled on the couch, completely drunk, still holding a bottle of alcohol. The place was a mess. Clothes, trash, and bottles everywhere. It looked like he hadn't cleaned the apartment in weeks. I walked over to him and asked, "Heo, why did you drink so much?" He opened his eyes, gazing at me with a blurry look. "Quinn, you're here?" he mumbled, still half conscious. I sighed. "You really drank too much. Wait here. I'll go get something for you." I quickly went downstairs to buy some lemons to make a drink to help him sober up. When I came back, Heo was asleep, and the room was eerily quiet. I rolled up my sleeves and started cleaning the apartment. I washed the dishes, picked up his clothes, and organised the mess on the floor. I did everything as if I were his wife. As I worked, I couldn't help but wonder why I was doing all this. Was I still in love with him? Did I want to be with him again? By the time I finished cleaning, it was already 10 p.m. I quietly walked over to Heo, who was still asleep, and looked at him for a moment. His familiar face, his familiar figure, everything about him made my heart ache. I sat there for a while, unable to leave. Then I whispered, "Good night, Heo. I'm going home now." Just as I stood up to leave, something unexpected happened. Heo grabbed my hand. "Don't go. Stay here with me." "Wait, you're awake now?" I asked, surprised. "I was awake when you were sitting there staring at me," Heo said, his voice thick with emotion. "What? Do I have something on my face? Why were you staring at me?" I didn't know how to respond. "I just haven't seen you in so long. I wanted to look at you." He smiled slightly. "You were staring for half an hour? Were you missing me?" I didn't know what to say, so I just stayed quiet. Heo pulled me down to lie beside him. My heart raced, and I could feel it beating wildly in my chest. "What are you doing? Let me go. Why are you getting so close to me, pressing your face against mine, and saying, 'Stay here with me tonight'?" Just a single word from Hugh, and all my self-respect vanished. I stood there, lost in a daze, as suddenly we collided with each other, and the heat of our longing took over. It had been over 6 months since I had felt the absence of a man's touch, and tonight I was consumed by that yearning. Finally, I was able to feel the warmth and passion I had missed for so long. In that moment, I realised Hye also had a burning desire for me. Our connection, our longing, was like an unstoppable fire that flared up between us. That night, I felt incredibly happy and completely fulfilled. I lay still in Hye's arms, overwhelmed with joy, not realising that in my happiness I had forgotten to take my birth control, and soon my life was about to change forever. Hugh and I decided to get back together. We both realised that we couldn't live without each other, so, despite everything, I threw caution to the wind and rushed back to him. Hugh took me to his apartment, helping me gather my things. I moved in with him, and for a time, everything felt perfect. During this period, I was blissfully happy, ignoring the advice of my friends and family. I didn't care what anyone thought. As long as I was with Hugh and felt loved, that was all that mattered. Hugh started filming again, and I stayed home, cooking and cleaning for him, making sure everything was ready when he returned. On days when there were serious cases at the clinic, I would go, but most of the time, I left it to the staff to handle the work. My focus was entirely on caring for my husband, looking after our home, and making sure he had everything he needed. One day, while Hugh was filming, I was at home, lying on the couch, waiting for him to return. I was scrolling through my phone when the doorbell rang. I wondered who it could be. When I opened the door, I was shocked to see Hoa standing there looking for Hugh. My blood boiled. I raised my chin and asked, "What are you doing here?" Hoa looked surprised and asked, "Sister Quinn? Why are you here? Where's Hugh?" "Hugh and I are back together now," I snapped. "If you keep hanging around him, I swear I'll hurt you." Hoa's face turned pale as she stammered, "No, you didn't." "No, I didn't," I retorted. "You better get out of here before I lose it. I don't want to see you anywhere near him again." I emphasised my words so she would understand her place. I was prepared to fight anyone who threatened my relationship with Hugh. A month after we reunited, I found out I was pregnant. I burst into tears of happiness. I immediately called Hugh, and he was just as shocked as I was. That night after dinner, we lay together in bed, talking about everything. "Hugh," I said, "we're going to have a baby." He embraced me tightly, his voice full of emotion. "Quinn, I'm sorry for everything I put you through in the past, but I promise from now on I'll make it up to you and our child." "Don't worry," I whispered back. "It's all in the past now. I love you so much, Hugh." He looked at me with guilt in his eyes. "I've been so foolish, Quinn. I'm so sorry for all the hurt I caused you. I'll never make that mistake again." I reassured him, "Don't blame yourself. I love you. Let's move forward together." but as we spoke, I found myself confessing something I had buried deep inside. Hugh, I need to tell you something. A long time ago, when I was feeling lost and alone because of your indifference, I made a mistake. I went looking for a one-night stand. To feel something, anything. But even that didn't fill the emptiness I felt. Hugh's face darkened. He furrowed his brows. You did what? Good, I tried to explain. I'm sorry, it was a mistake. But I was lost. I felt like I couldn't go on like that. You were distant, and I needed someone to fill the void. But you pulled away from me, his arms no longer holding me close. He sat up and I asked, "Where are you going?" "I need some space," he replied, walking out to the living room to smoke. I sat there, unsure of what had just happened. After that night, I noticed something had changed between us. His warmth, his affection, it was gone. I felt the coldness creeping in. The next morning when I woke up, I noticed Hugh wasn't by my side. I called him, but he didn't answer. I tried calling again, but it was clear he was ignoring me. "Hugh, why aren't you answering?" I asked, my voice full of concern. "Where are you?" After a while, he finally answered the phone, but just hung up without saying anything. I felt lost. I was carrying his child, and yet he wasn't even showing any concern for me. The whole day passed without a word from him. I called him several more times, but still nothing. I felt so neglected, so abandoned, and yet I didn't know what to do. I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning, my thoughts racing. The next morning, I was exhausted but determined to see him. I took a taxi to the film set, arriving an hour later. When I found Hugh, he was sitting there, not even acknowledging me. I could feel the distance between us, and it hurt more than anything. I walked up to him and softly said, "Hugh, are you upset with me? Can we talk?" He sighed deeply. "I'm disappointed in you, Quinn. I never thought you'd do something like that." "I'm sorry," I said. "I know I made a mistake, but please don't be so cold to me. I love you and I regret everything that happened. Please forgive me." He stared at me, and his words cut deep. "I don't know if I can forgive you. What you did, it's hard for me to forget. But remember this. Men can make mistakes, they can sleep around, but women, wives, must be faithful. You need to understand that." His words crushed me. I had forgiven him so many times, but now, for the first time, it felt like he was punishing me for my mistake. I was heartbroken, feeling the unfairness of it all. Even when my husband betrayed me, seeking every possible way to divorce me, it didn't matter. I had to ask myself, how could you do this to me? After everything, how could you hurt me this way? You may think I'm just a terrible person, weak and pathetic, but let's not forget, you're no better than I am. Why? How could you sleep with someone else? How could you crave someone so much? You've said all these hurtful things, and yet I have nothing left to say to you. The truth remains, and it always will. You are nothing but a hypocrite. You say I'm the bad one for making a mistake, but what about you? You abandoned me, knowing I was carrying your child. And yet, you had the nerve to call me a betrayer, just like you. I could not understand how life could be so unfair. You treated me like dirt when you were the one who caused all of this. I had always wanted to believe in you. I had always held on to hope, even after everything that happened. I gave you a chance to come back, to fix things, thinking we would be happy again, especially now that I was pregnant. But no, after more than a month of being together again, you walked away. The pain was unbearable. And this time, it was worse than before because I was carrying our child. I walked the streets, crying so much that my eyes swelled up. I felt lost, alone, abandoned. The pain I felt inside was consuming me. I kept asking myself, why does it have to be this way? Why should I suffer like this? I didn't want to talk to anyone, but even in that pain, life doesn't stop. The world kept turning. The taxis drove by, but I refused to get in. I just wanted to be alone. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. And yet, despite all the hurt you caused, I found myself wondering, why does it seem like you are allowed to do all these terrible things and get away with it, while I am not? Why can't I make my own mistakes and be forgiven, just like you? As the days passed, I walked back to the apartment, unsure of what to do next. The betrayal from you stung deeper than I had ever imagined. You abandoned me when I was pregnant, and even when I tried to hold on to hope, you left again. You left me with nothing but my grief, my thoughts, and the baby growing inside me. The pain was overwhelming. How could someone I once loved cause so much pain? How could someone I trusted betray me so completely? Eventually, I decided to move forward on my own. It wasn't easy, but I had to. I wasn't going to let your actions control my future. I focused on my baby and on surviving, on giving her the best life possible. I no longer cared about anything else. No matter how many times I had been hurt, I knew I had to be strong, not for myself, but for the child I was bringing into this world. Months passed, and I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, my little princess. I named her Bin-An, peace. That's what I wanted for her. I wanted her life to be peaceful, filled with happiness and love. Even though I was a single mother, I was content. I was at peace. My daughter became my everything. As I watched her grow, I knew that I had made the right decision to leave the past behind. She was my joy. Every day I worked hard to provide for her, to raise her to be a good, kind person. My heart healed little by little as I focused on her and on myself. I no longer had the energy to invest in a relationship with anyone else. I had been through enough pain. I was done with men, with trust, with heartbreak. Now my priorities were clear, my daughter and my work. Everything else didn't matter. Time passed, and my daughter grew up quickly. When she turned 3, she started asking more questions. She was curious about her father. "Where's my dad?" she asked one day. "Why doesn't he come to see me?" How do you answer that? How do you explain the truth to a child? It was a painful moment, but I told her the only story I could. "Your dad works in another country, sweetheart. He's very busy, but he loves you." It was a lie, but it was the only thing I could say at the time. What else could I tell her? I didn't want to hurt her more. I couldn't bear to tell her the truth just yet. One day, as I was dropping her off at school, I met a mother of another child in her class. She looked at me and said, "Is your daughter Bin-An?" My son Min-Juk is in the same class, and they're really close. I've heard him talk about her, but he told me your daughter doesn't have a dad. Is that true? Her question hit me like a punch in the stomach. I was silent for a moment, trying to hold myself together. "No, that's not true," I said finally, my voice wavering. "My husband works overseas, so he's rarely here. That's why people think she doesn't have a dad." The woman seemed satisfied with that explanation, but inside I was dying. I had just lied to someone. I had lied to my daughter's classmate, and I had lied to myself. How long could I keep this up? How long could I keep telling everyone that her father was just away at work when the truth was so different? Later that day, as I was taking Bin-An home, she asked me, "Mum, do you have a boyfriend now?" I froze. Yes, sweetie, I do," I said, unsure of how to handle the question. She looked at me with those innocent eyes and said, "I like Min-Juk. Can you and him be together?" I was caught off guard. My daughter, at just over 3 years old, was already thinking about boyfriends. I couldn't believe it. She'd only been in school for a few months, and here she was asking about boys. She was just like me. I couldn't help but laugh, brushing my hand through her hair. "You're too young for that, my love. Besides, you're still my little girl. And remember, you're my first priority." As I looked at her, I felt a mixture of emotions. Yes, I was a single mother. Yes, life had been difficult, but I had my daughter, and that was enough. I didn't need anything else. I had made it this far on my own, and I would continue to do so for her. And so, life went on. My daughter grew, and I worked hard, taking care of her, keeping her happy. I had found peace, even in the midst of pain. My daughter was my joy, and I would do whatever it took to give her the best life possible. "Mum, is Dad as handsome as that guy?" One day, I was walking with my daughter when she suddenly pointed outside and asked, "Mum, is Dad as handsome as that man over there?" I looked up and saw a man walking on the sidewalk. He really was quite handsome. I nodded and said, "Yes, sweetheart, your dad is even more handsome than him." "Really, Mum?" she asked, wide-eyed. "Are you sure? Can you call him? I want to talk to Dad. Call him on video so I can see him too." I felt a pang in my heart. My daughter had been asking about her father for some time now. "Sweetheart," I replied, "I've told you before, your dad is far away and he doesn't have internet, so we can't call him." But that explanation didn't satisfy her. She started crying and shouting at me. "I want to meet him! Please take me to see him! I want to see Dad!" I tried to comfort her as best as I could, but it was hard. "Your dad is working far away, sweetie. He's busy right now, but he promised he would come back soon. If you're a good girl, he will be home before you know it." But my daughter wasn't easily consoled. On the way home, I bought her a doll, hoping it would distract her. She played with it for a while, but after a few hours, she started asking about her dad again. The next morning, as we were getting ready for school, she suddenly screamed again, "Call Dad! I want to talk to him!" It was exhausting, and I didn't know how to handle it. I couldn't keep lying to her. She was getting older and more curious. She even asked me to show her a picture of her father. I browsed through Facebook and found a man who looked like the person I had mentioned to my daughter. "Here, sweetie, this is your dad," I said, pointing at the picture. My daughter's eyes lit up. "Wow, Mom, he's so handsome!" she exclaimed, clapping her hands. She kissed the screen and looked up at me. "Mum, can you call him now?" I felt a knot in my stomach. "Sweetie," I began, "he doesn't have internet, remember? I've told you." But my daughter wasn't convinced. "How can he post pictures on Facebook if he doesn't have internet?" she asked innocently. "Mum, please call him. I want to talk to him." In a panic, I turned off my phone and pretended it was broken. Then I drove her to my parents' house, hoping it would help her forget about her father for a while. But that was only a temporary fix. She was 5 years old now, and she could sense that I was hiding something from her. I couldn't keep lying to my daughter. I thought back to the time when I had told her father about our baby, and he had called me saying he wanted to do a DNA test. He wanted to see if she was really his daughter. He said that if she was his, he would give us 8 million Vietnamese dong a month to support her. He promised to take responsibility for her. But in my anger, I lashed out at him and told him to stay away from my daughter. Since then, he had disappeared. It had been nearly 5 years, and I had not heard from him. One Sunday, when my daughter turned 5, I took her shopping at a mall. After we finished, we sat down to have some ice cream. Suddenly, she jumped up and shouted, "Dad! Dad! Over there!" I froze in shock, then quickly turned to look. She had spotted a man walking by, and in her excitement, she ran after him. "Sweetheart, wait!" "Don't run after strangers," I shouted, running after her. But to my horror, she didn't stop. She was calling out to him, "Dad! Dad! Is it really you?" The man turned around, confused. "What's going on?" he asked. My daughter rushed up to him, hugging his legs tightly and saying, "Dad! It's me! I'm your daughter! When did you come back?" I felt completely helpless. I apologised to the man, explaining that my daughter had mistaken him for her father, but she wouldn't listen. She kept holding on to his legs, insisting that he was her dad. She even mentioned how I had shown her a picture of him before. To my surprise, the man smiled awkwardly. "I'm sorry, but I'm not your father," he said. But my daughter was persistent. "Yes, you are." "Mom showed me your photo. You're the one." The man, still confused, glanced at me. I realised that this man was the same person I had shown my daughter's picture to on Facebook. The man's name was Huang Dung, and I had told my daughter he was her father, even though he wasn't. I had lied to my daughter, and now the truth was out in a way I never expected. I picked up my daughter and tried to leave quickly, but she kept crying and yelling. Everyone around us stopped to watch, not understanding what was happening. I felt embarrassed and unsure of what to do. Finally, I asked the man if he would help calm my daughter down. To my relief, he agreed. He kindly drove us home, and my daughter was so thrilled that she clung to him the entire time. Huang Dung was 5 years older than me. He was successful, had his own company, and was still single. He had never imagined that a day like this would come, where a little girl would claim him as her father. On the drive home, my daughter wouldn't stop talking to him. "Dad, where have you been all this time? Why haven't you come home? I missed you so much." Huang Dung laughed nervously. "I've been busy, sweetheart, but now I'm here. Will you stay with us now, Dad?" You don't need to work. Mum has lots of money. She can take care of us, she said innocently. Huang Dong chuckled awkwardly, unsure how to respond. By the time we got home, it was already past midnight. The only way my daughter would fall asleep was if Huang Dong sang her a lullaby. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. It was funny, but also heartbreaking. I had learned my lesson, never lie to a child. The situation is quite complicated, and honestly, I don't know what to do. After my daughter falls asleep, only then do I have a chance to sit down and talk with Huang Dong. I feel so awkward. Suddenly I've caused him to get involved in this mess, and I owe him an apology. I said, I'm really sorry for dragging you into this. Can you give me your bank account number? I'd like to transfer the money to you. Huang Dong was surprised and asked, What money? Why are you transferring money to me? I replied, I'm paying you for all the hard work you've done today with my daughter. You've been so patient with her. He raised an eyebrow and said, I see. But what's this all about? What are you asking me to do? I hesitated and then said, I need your help with something. Can you pretend to be my daughter's father for just one day? Wait, what? Pretend to be her father? Huang Dong was taken aback. I continued, Yes, I'll tell her that her real father is working, and you can come over once a month to act as her dad for a day. I'll pay you 10 million Vietnamese dong each time. Huang Dong paused for a moment, then said, Wait, so you're hiring a father for your daughter? Yes, I replied, feeling helpless. I know it's wrong, but my daughter is getting older and I can't keep lying to her. Please, can you help me? Huang Dong looked at me with concern. Where's her real father? I sighed deeply. He left when I was pregnant. He's not a man worth mentioning. If he were any decent, my daughter wouldn't have to go through this. We sat there talking for a long time. Our conversation was surprisingly smooth, and by the time we realised it, the clock showed 4 a.m. Huang Dong finally stood up and said, I'll head back home to shower, and then I'll come back to act as her father. But I need to say goodbye to her before I leave, or she'll throw a tantrum when she wakes up. I thanked him and asked again for his bank account number. Can you give me your bank details? I want to transfer the money right away. He gave me a small smirk. So you're solving everything with money again, huh? I nodded. Yes. Everything can be bought with money, even a father for my daughter. Huang Dong laughed, shaking his head. Do you think I'm cheap? I'm not going to sell myself like that. But this time, I'll help you with your daughter. Just temporarily, though. Don't think this is a long-term solution. You need to find a real father for her. I felt a pang of shame. But where do I even begin? What do I tell her? Huang Dong sighed and said, Tell her the truth. She's old enough to understand now. I reluctantly agreed. Later, Huang Dong went home to shower, and by 6 a.m, he was back at my house. He hadn't slept at all, and neither had I. We were both exhausted. When my daughter Bin An woke up, she ran straight into Huang Dong's arms, calling him Daddy. I smiled but felt an ache in my heart. She hugged him tightly and said, Daddy, let's go out today. I want you and Mommy to take me somewhere fun. I looked at Huang Dong, who was trying to avoid her gaze. But Daddy's busy today, sweetheart. He has a meeting at 10 o'clock. Bin An pouted and begged, Please, Daddy, let's go play. Please. Huang Dong hesitated for a moment before giving in. He sent a text to his assistant, asking to cancel his meeting and reschedule it for tomorrow. All right, sweetie, I'll take you today, he said, smiling. I was a bit surprised by his change of heart. You're being awfully nice today. As we all went to a fun park, we ate, shopped for clothes for Bin An, and spent a lovely time together. By 2 p.m, we were sitting by the lake, eating ice cream, when I started to feel extremely sleepy. Huang Dong noticed and asked, Are you tired? Should we head home? Before I could respond, Bin An interrupted, Daddy, why are you calling Mommy she? Aren't I supposed to call her Mum? Why do you call her she? Huang Dong turned red with embarrassment, scratching his head. Oops! I forgot. I'm sorry. Bin An insisted, Daddy, you have to hold Mommy's hand like this. She grabbed my hand and pulled Huang Dong's arm over my shoulder. I could see him getting shy, and it made me chuckle. Just then, one of Huang Dong's friends appeared with his girlfriend and came over to greet us. Dong, what's going on here? What are you doing with them? Huang Dong froze, not knowing how to respond. But Bin An ever the chatterbox, spoke up quickly. "Hello, Uncle." "I'm Bin An. I'm Daddy Dung's daughter." Her words made both of Huang Dung's friends freeze in shock. "Dung, you're married?" one of them asked, eyes wide in disbelief. Huang Dung awkwardly scratched his head. It's a long story. I'll explain later." His friend pressed on. "But wait, are you getting married soon?" Huang Dung looked at me for a moment and replied, "Yes. We're planning to get married at the end of the year. We haven't had the ceremony yet because her family has some issues to sort out." "Ah, so that's how it is." "Well, congratulations, man. I'll wait for the invitation," the friend said, clapping him on the back. Once his friends left, I turned to Huang Dung and teased, "You're really good at lying, aren't you?" He laughed. "What else could I do?" Sometimes a lie is the best option. As I reflected on the day, I felt a bit sad. We hadn't made any real progress in solving our problems, but for now, this temporary solution seemed to ease things. "Thank you so much for today. I'll pay you 30 million Vietnamese dong for these 2 days. Huang Dung raised an eyebrow. "You really think I'm doing this for money?" I smiled. "A little bit of both, right?" Huang Dung shook his head. "No, it's not about the money. When I heard your story, I couldn't just turn my back. I felt for you, so I decided to help." As I lay down to sleep later that evening, I couldn't help but be impressed by Huang Dung. Not only was he handsome, but he was kind and compassionate too. Later that night I went to bed, too tired to even stay up. Huang Dung sat beside Bin An, who was still wide awake, and eventually fell asleep in the chair. Bin An noticed that her dad was dozing off and said, "Daddy, go sleep." "You've been working hard." Huang Dung, half asleep, stood up and followed her to her room. The long day had finally caught up to him. The story of Quinn and Huang Dung. Little Anne tugged her father's hand and led him into her mother's room. Huang Dung, half asleep, barely opened his eyes, seeing nothing, and climbed into bed to sleep right away. Little Anne carefully closed the door behind her to let her parents rest, then headed to her own room where she opened her iPad and began watching cartoons. In the middle of the night, I woke up feeling an odd warmth. It felt like someone was breathing right in my face. I wondered to myself, why is Little Anne so hot tonight? Could she be running a fever? I quickly reached out and touched her forehead, but I was startled by what I felt. Her little body was now much larger than before, and I didn't recognise it. Wait, where am I? I jumped out of bed, frantically searching for the source of the noise. It was Huang Dung. Huang Dung! Why is he lying next to me? My heart raced, and my mind screamed, has he taken advantage of me? After all, he had always been so kind. Maybe it was all part of his plan. He was a rotten man, and I was in danger. I ran toward the corner of the room where I kept a wooden stick for protection. Holding the stick, I lunged at him, planning to hit him, but fate seemed to have other plans. I tripped over his shoes on the floor and crashed straight into the bed, hitting my head hard. The pain was immediate. My forehead felt swollen like a ripe fruit, and I was dizzy from the impact. Huang Dung quickly woke up, alarmed by my fall. He rushed to help me up, asking, "Are you okay, Quinn?" My head hurt terribly. "Oh, it's killing me." "What were you doing falling into the bed like that?" he said, concerned. "Your forehead is as big as a fruit." I felt a surge of frustration. "It's your fault. I found you lying next to me in my bed. I freaked out and thought you were doing something. I was just sleeping here because I was so tired. I didn't mean to scare you." He looked genuinely apologetic. "I'm really sorry, Quinn. I didn't mean to frighten you. Please believe me, I've done nothing wrong." Despite my anger, I could feel a small sense of relief. "I hope you're telling the truth," I muttered, still shaken. He gently placed an ice pack on my swollen forehead to ease the pain. After a while, the dizziness faded. "I should check on little Anne," I said, suddenly remembering my daughter. The exhaustion of the night had made me forget about her, and I worried she might need me. I made my way to her room. "You rest here. I'll check on her," Huang Dung said, reassuring me. "Thank you," I said softly, feeling embarrassed for doubting him earlier. "I'm sorry for what I said." "No problem," he smiled. "Just rest. You've had a rough night." I went into little Anne's room. She was sleeping soundly, unaware of the chaos that had unfolded. A sense of relief washed over me, and I returned to my own room. Huang Dong was already in bed again, and despite the tension, I couldn't help but feel grateful for his kindness. As I lay there, I drifted into a strange dream. I was wearing a beautiful white dress, like a princess. Next to me was a handsome prince with a charming smile. He looked at me with deep affection and asked, "Princess, would you like to be with me forever? I promise I will love, care for, and protect you always." "Of course, I would love to," I replied. We shared a passionate kiss, and I felt pure happiness as though I was floating in a dream, but suddenly I woke up with a start, disoriented. I opened my eyes and froze in panic. Somehow I had ended up lying on top of Huang Dong, and I was kissing his neck. My heart raced. What was happening? I jumped up, flustered. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I was dreaming." But Huang Dong didn't let go of me. He held me tightly and laughed softly. "What kind of dream was that? You were kissing me and pulling my shirt off. Are you trying to take advantage of me?" I struggled to free myself. It's just a dream. I wasn't trying to do anything. I'm so sorry." Huang Dong just chuckled. "Don't try to deny it. I can tell what you're thinking." I was shocked. "Are you crazy? I was dreaming. Please let go of me." But he didn't. Instead, he kissed me passionately and I couldn't resist. My mind was a blur, and suddenly, after 5 long years of being alone, I felt something I had not experienced in a long time. I was overwhelmed with emotions. 5 years had passed since my divorce from Hue, and since then, I had shut myself off from men. But now, with Huang Dong, everything felt different. My feelings, my desires, my body, it all came rushing back. By the time the sun came up, our intimate encounter finally slowed, and I felt sore all over. My body ached, especially my back and hips. I stumbled into the bathroom, wincing at the pain. I've gone too far this time. After a while, I came out of the bathroom and looked at Huang Dong, who was still sound asleep. I couldn't help but notice how handsome he looked. His toned body, his six-pack abs, he truly was attractive. As I stood there, lost in thought, Huang Dong suddenly opened his eyes and looked at me with a grin. "What are you staring at? Do you want more?" he teased. I quickly looked away. "No, that's not it." He pulled me close again, making me stumble into his arms. "Let's get going, or your daughter will be knocking on the door soon." Just then, we heard a knock on the door. It was little Anne calling out, "Dad! Mum! Get up! It's morning!" Huang Dong and I scrambled to get dressed. He whispered in my ear, "See? I told you they'd wake up, but don't worry, tonight I'll be back." I was confused. "What do you mean tonight?" He smiled slyly. "I'll be back. We'll talk more then." We went out to join little Anne for breakfast. As we sat down, she turned to me and said, "Mom, you have to meet my boyfriend, Min Jute. He's nice. You'll like him." I laughed. "You've got a boyfriend now, Anne?" "Yes, I do. His name is Min Jute. He's a good guy," she said, grinning. Huang Dong raised an eyebrow. "Boyfriend? Wow. Your daughter's growing up fast, Quinn." I smiled, but there was still a lingering feeling of uncertainty. Was I ready to let go of my past and embrace the future with someone like Huang Dong? Only time would tell. But for now, I had a family to care for, and that was all that mattered. Huang Dong was driving back to the company, his mood light and relaxed. He was smiling to himself, enjoying the drive. Everything seemed normal until he reached a red light. Most people stopped, but Huang Dong didn't. He continued driving, completely unaware. Out of nowhere, a traffic cop stepped out to stop him. Surprised, Huang Dong looked at the officer and asked, "What's going on?" "Why are you stopping me?" The officer responded, "You've violated the traffic law." Huang Dong was puzzled. "Me? Violated the law? Are you sure? What do you mean?" "You ran the red light," the officer explained. It was then that Huang Dong suddenly realised his mistake. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, a bit embarrassed. After paying the fine, he drove off, still feeling a little confused. As he continued on his way to the office, he muttered to himself, "That's strange. I really didn't notice the red light. What a mess." Huang Dong had been absent from work for 2 days, so there were a lot of documents and contracts waiting for his approval. However, despite the workload, he didn't feel stressed. His cheerful mood carried him through the day. His assistant brought him a cup of coffee, saying, "Here, have some coffee to stay alert and get to work." Huang Dong took the cup, smiled and replied, "You drink it. I don't need it. I'm more than awake already." His assistant looked curious. "So, what's got you in such a good mood? You seem different today. What's going on?" Huang Dong chuckled and replied, "A person who's been single for so long like you wouldn't understand. But trust me, I have my reasons to be happy today." The assistant raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Come on, tell me. What's going on? Did something happen?" Huang Dong smiled and said, "I've got a lot to be happy about, but it's a bit too much for you to handle right now. You'll find out eventually, but for now, I'll keep it to myself." The assistant insisted, "No way, come on, tell me. I've known you for years. I want to know what's going on with you." Huang Dong laughed and responded, "Well, I've got a wife and kids now. Life has changed." The assistant froze, completely shocked. "Wait, what? You've got a wife and kids? Are you joking?" Huang Dong reassured him, "No, I'm not joking. It's all true. I have a family now." The assistant was still stunned. He had worked for Huang Dong for almost 10 years, and in all that time, he had never seen his boss with a woman or even heard of him having a girlfriend. So how could it be that in just 2 days Huang Dong had gone from being single to having a wife and children? As the day went on, the assistant couldn't stop glancing over at his boss. "What's up with him?" he thought to himself. "He's acting so strange today." Huang Dong noticed the assistant staring and asked, "What's going on? Why are you looking at me like that?" The assistant quickly looked away, a bit flustered. "Oh, nothing. I'm just a little tired. I've been overworking lately. You seem a bit different today, though. What's going on with you?" Huang Dong smirked and said, "You wouldn't understand. I'm not the same as I was before." The assistant admitted, "Yeah, I guess so. I've never been in a relationship, so I can't really understand what you're feeling." Huang Dong smiled knowingly and said, "Exactly. Now let's get back to work. I still have to leave early to pick up my daughter." The assistant was surprised. "You really have a daughter? How old is she?" Huang Dong replied proudly, "She's 5 years old now. You'll meet her one day." The assistant smiled. "Wow, 5 years old already. Time flies." As Huang Dong got ready to leave the office, he told his assistant, "You'll meet my daughter soon enough. Maybe in 15 years you can ask her out. Who knows? Maybe she'll like you then." The assistant laughed nervously. "Oh no, I'll be too old by then, but thanks anyway." Huang Dong drove home that evening, reflecting on what it meant to be a father. The feeling was indescribable. Just hearing his daughter call him daddy was enough to make his heart swell with love. At that moment, he promised himself that he would be there for his daughter, for her whole life. He would be the father she needed, a real father, not just playing the part. Later that evening, Huang Dong took his daughter to the park. He lifted her up into his arms and asked, "How was school today, sweetheart?" His daughter smiled and said, "It was fun, but I like being with you more, Daddy." Huang Dong chuckled and replied, "You have to go to school though, sweetie. And besides, I'm busy with work too, but don't worry, we'll have lots of fun together soon. I'll take you to my office one day." "Yay, I can't wait," his daughter cheered. As they were leaving the park, they bumped into Min Duke and his mum. The little girl waved excitedly and shouted, "Min Duke! Over here." Min Duke smiled and asked, "Who's this? Is this your dad?" "Yes," she said proudly. "This is my daddy. Isn't he handsome?" Min Duke's mother walked over and said, "So this is the famous Huang Dong? We've heard a lot about you, but I didn't know you had a child. When I heard about Anne's story, I thought she didn't have a father. It's so nice to see you both together." Huang Dong smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. He had promised himself that he would always be there for Anne, no matter what. And now, seeing the compassion in Min Duke's mother's eyes, he knew he had made the right decision. As they left the park, Huang Dong thought to himself, "No matter what happens, I will be the father she deserves. I will protect her, and I will love her forever." Later that night, on the drive home with his daughter, Huang Dong asked, "What do you want for dinner, sweetie?" She responded, "Chicken drumsticks, Daddy, and ice cream, and a princess dress. Can you buy me one too?" Huang Dong laughed. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you want." As they arrived home, he felt a deep sense of happiness. He had never seen his daughter so joyful before. He realised with full certainty that she needed him, a real father, and he would always be there for her. But still, he couldn't help feeling a bit nervous. He worried that their happiness would be interrupted. He knew that being a father wasn't always easy, but it was a responsibility he was ready to embrace. One day, he left me and my child again. I was terrified of the thought of relationships coming together and falling apart. Looking back, I had been abandoned by Hugh twice already, and now I didn't have the courage to start a new love. The assistant raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Come on, tell me. What's going on? Did something happen?" Huang Dong smiled and said, "I've got a lot to be happy about, but it's a bit too much for you to handle right now. You'll find out eventually, but for now, I'll keep it to myself." The assistant insisted. "No way! Come on, tell me. I've known you for years. I want to know what's going on with you." Huang Dong laughed and responded, "Well, I've got a wife and kids now. Life has changed." The assistant froze, completely shocked. "Wait, what? You've got a wife and kids? Are you joking?" Huang Dong reassured him. "No, I'm not joking. It's all true. I have a family now." The assistant was still stunned. He had worked for Huang Dong for almost 10 years, and in all that time, he had never seen his boss with a woman or even heard of him having a girlfriend. So how could it be that in just 2 days, Huang Dong had gone from being single to having a wife and children? As the day went on, the assistant couldn't stop glancing over at his boss. "What's up with him?" he thought to himself. "He's acting so strange today." Huang Dong noticed the assistant staring and asked, "What's going on? Why are you looking at me like that?" The assistant quickly looked away, a bit flustered. "Oh, nothing. I'm just a little tired. I've been overworking lately. You seem a bit different today, though. What's going on with you?" Huang Dong smirked and said, "You wouldn't understand. I'm not the same as I was before." The assistant admitted, "Yeah, I guess so. I've never been in a relationship, so I can't really understand what you're feeling." Huang Dong smiled knowingly and said, "Exactly. Now let's get back to work. I still have to leave early to pick up my daughter." The assistant was surprised. "You really have a daughter? How old is she?" Huang Dong replied proudly, "She's 5 years old now. You'll meet her one day." The assistant smiled. "Wow, 5 years old already. Time flies." As Huang Dong got ready to leave the office, he told his assistant, "You'll meet my daughter soon enough. Maybe in 15 years you can ask her out. Who knows? Maybe she'll like you then." The assistant laughed nervously. "Oh no, I'll be too old by then, but thanks anyway." Huang Dong drove home that evening, reflecting on what it meant to be a father. The feeling was indescribable. Just hearing his daughter call him daddy was enough to make his heart swell with love. At that moment, he promised himself that he would be there for his daughter, for her whole life. He would be the father she needed, a real father, not just playing the part. Later that evening, Huang Dong took his daughter to the park. He lifted her up into his arms and asked, "How was school today, sweetheart?" His daughter smiled and said, "It was fun, but I like being with you more, Daddy." Huang Dong chuckled and replied, "You have to go to school though, sweetie. And besides, I'm busy with work too. But don't worry, we'll have lots of fun together soon. I'll take you to my office one day." "Yay! I can't wait!" his daughter cheered. As they were leaving the park, they bumped into Min Duke and his mum. The little girl waved excitedly and shouted, "Min Duke! Over here." Min Duke smiled and asked, "Who's this? Is this your dad?" "Yes," she said proudly. "This is my daddy. Isn't he handsome?" Min Duke's mother walked over and said, "So this is the famous Huang Dong? We've heard a lot about you, but I didn't know you had a child. When I heard about Anne's story, I thought she didn't have a father. It's so nice to see you both together." Huang Dong smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. He had promised himself that he would always be there for Anne, no matter what. And now, seeing the compassion in Min Duke's mother's eyes, he knew he had made the right decision. As they left the park, Huang Dong thought to himself, "No matter what happens, I will be the father she deserves. I will protect her, and I will love her forever." Later that night, on the drive home with his daughter, Huang Dong asked, "What do you want for dinner, sweetie?" She responded, "Chicken drumsticks, Daddy, and ice cream, and a princess dress. Can you buy me one too?" Huang Dong laughed. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you want." As they arrived home, he felt a deep sense of happiness. He had never seen his daughter so joyful before. He realised with full certainty that she needed him, a real father, and he would always be there for her. But still, he couldn't help feeling a bit nervous. He worried that their happiness would be interrupted. He knew that being a father wasn't always easy, but it was a responsibility he was ready to embrace. One day, he left me and my child again. I was terrified of the thought of relationships coming together and falling apart. Looking back, I had been abandoned by Hugh twice already, and now I didn't have the courage to start a new love. Huang Dong was indifferent. He casually walked over, kissed my forehead and said, "Hey, my dear wife." I'm home, and so is our little one. He also kissed my daughter and said, "Say hi to your mummy." I replied, "Hi, sweetie. Why aren't you greeting your dad?" Before I could finish, my daughter quickly sided with her dad, saying, "Mum, don't you see? Dad's right." I chuckled and said, "Oh, I forgot, sweetheart." Huang Dong winked at me and teased, "Be careful, wife. You might get pushed aside if you're not careful." I frowned, reminding him, "Huang Dong, you're crossing the line." Huang Dong shrugged as if nothing were wrong and continued to act like he was the father of my daughter and my husband. I gave my daughter a bath and then let her watch TV. I went to the bathroom to take a shower, but when I opened the door, I was startled to find Huang Dong standing there naked, totally unconcerned. I screamed, "Why didn't you knock?" Without flinching, he responded, "Why not shower together?" I shot back, "What if I cut off your... you know what?" Huang Dong pulled me into the bathroom, pushed me against the wall and said, "If you cut it off, how would I be able to use it?" Before I could respond, he was already kissing my neck. His body pressed close to mine, we intertwined, and his voice whispered, "Tonight, I'll love you till the morning." I couldn't resist. I nodded, yes. Later, we prepared to take my daughter out for a meal. We looked like a real family, and I started to believe in the happiness and hope that I had longed for. We dined at a fancy restaurant, and by chance, I ran into Hugh. He was dining with a younger girl, probably a new acting partner. When he saw me, he smiled and said, "Quinn, it's been a long time. How have you been?" "I've been good," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. He continued, "So, have you gotten married?" I couldn't hold back. "Of course, I've been married for a while." "Where's your husband?" he asked. I pointed to Huang Dong, who was holding our daughter, looking so proud. "That's my husband and my daughter," I said. "When you left me, I met a real man." Hugh was taken aback. "You have a daughter that old now?" I smiled wryly. "Yes, she's mine and Huang Dong's." He continued, "Wait, didn't you tell me you were pregnant back then? Wasn't that baby mine?" "No," I said firmly. "I never was pregnant with your child. I lied to you." Hugh was stunned. "You lied? You mean I thought that baby was mine all these years?" I nodded. "Yes, I did lie. And you were too blind to see it." I could sense Hugh was confused and regretful. He whispered, "You really tricked me, didn't you?" I didn't answer, but just smiled and returned to my seat next to Huang Dong and our daughter. Huang Dong looked at me and asked, "Who is that?" I saw a trace of sadness in his eyes. He seemed a bit down, but I kissed him softly on the lips and whispered, "Don't worry, he's just the past." "You're my present and future," our daughter chimed in. "Mum, I'm hungry." My sweet words melted Huang Dong's heart. It was clear now. This was the love we shared, and I hoped that it would last. But was it really possible to hope for happiness in this love? Was I sure that everything would work out in the future? I didn't know for sure, but at least right now I could feel that Huang Dong was sincere in his feelings for me. Meanwhile, Hugh sat across from his girlfriend, his eyes flickering toward me and Huang Dong. Seeing me happy with someone else made him feel uneasy, and a sense of regret washed over him. He couldn't help but think back to the day when I told him I was pregnant. That moment had been filled with misunderstanding, and he had grown distant. He had abandoned me when I needed him the most. That baby, could it really be mine? Hugh thought. The child was nearly 5 years old, and though he tried to push the thought away, the girl did resemble him in some ways. "Look, she has the same eyes as me," his girlfriend remarked. Hugh sighed, realising that he had been wrong all along. "I can't believe I abandoned Quinn, and now I can't find anyone who compares to her." He had been through many relationships since then, but none of them worked out. It was as if no one could tolerate his stubbornness the way I did. Quinn back then had been the only one who truly understood him, but now it was too late. Once you've lost something, you can't just get it back, Hugh thought. I didn't appreciate her when I had her. Hugh couldn't accept it. When he saw Huang Dong walking toward his car, he quickly approached me and asked, "Quinn, is she really not my daughter? Is she truly not mine?" I snapped back, "No! I've told you she's not yours. Can't you see? She doesn't look like you at all." But Hugh was relentless. "She looks so much like you. Her eyes, the way she sleeps. It's like she's mine." I was angry now. "Don't talk to me about that. When I was pregnant, where were you? You left me and didn't care at all. Now you want to come back and question me about it? No, I won't let you." I could see his shame, but I had no patience left for him. "Go home and think about everything you've done to me," I said coldly. "I don't want to see you again," my daughter asked. "Mum? Who was that man?" I gently patted her head and whispered, "He's someone who doesn't have a good mind, sweetie. Don't worry about him." We walked to the car, and Huang Dong asked, "What did he say to you?" "It was nothing, just nonsense," I replied. "Should I give him a lesson so he doesn't bother me again?" I shook my head. "No, don't. Let's just move on. It's not worth the trouble." Huang Dong smiled at me. "Don't worry. We're a real family now. And that's all that matters. You, me, and Anne, we're a family." He gently patted our daughter's head. "You're a good girl, Anne. I'm proud of you." We all smiled, feeling like a true family. "Let's go buy a princess dress for our daughter." "Yes, let's go buy a princess dress. I'm so excited." Looking at how happy Huang Dong and our daughter are together, I can't help but feel a sense of peace. Their joy fills me with warmth, and for a moment I wonder if maybe Huang Dong is the one who truly deserves to be Anne's father. As for Hugh, he doesn't deserve to be a part of her life. I would never allow him the chance to get close to my daughter. But then Hugh appeared again, this time teasing me. I met him again, this time in the restaurant, and the next day he came straight to my house. The moment he showed up, it threw my quiet life with my daughter completely upside down. His presence made me uncomfortable. Anne was curious about him, unsure of who he was, and Huang Dong felt caught in the middle. He realised that Hugh was Anne's biological father, and that fact unsettled him. He was afraid that I might go back to Hugh so Anne could have the life she deserved with her real father. After all, Huang Dong had only been a stepfather so far. He couldn't help but feel heartbroken, but didn't know how to express it. He just sat there silently, watching Hugh play with Anne in the living room. Meanwhile, Hugh tried to win Anne's affection. Every evening, he'd bring a new gift. Sometimes a doll, sometimes a toy kitchen set, or even a toy doctor's kit. I couldn't stand it anymore. I threw all the gifts Hugh had bought for Anne into the trash and shouted at him, "Hugh! Why do you keep bothering us? Why do you keep coming here every day and causing trouble for us? From now on, don't ever come here again. Do you hear me?" Hugh stood up calmly and softly spoke the truth. "But you can't hide the truth forever, can you? I'm the father of this child, and I have the right to claim my daughter." He said that with no shame. How could he not feel any guilt after everything he had done? "When I was pregnant with Anne, you abandoned me. You even said that this child wasn't yours. You didn't claim her. If I had decided to terminate the pregnancy back then, would you have even cared? Would you be here now trying to claim her as your daughter?" Hugh remained silent. He had left me when I needed him most, and now, after all this time, he shows up expecting to play the role of a father? It's as if he has no conscience at all. "And do you remember the day I gave birth? You even called me and said you wanted an ADN test to prove that Anne was really your daughter. If it was true, you said you would support her financially. But I refused because I could take care of my child on my own. I didn't need your support." Hugh's face turned red. He tried to explain himself, saying, "At that time, I was going through some issues, and I wasn't able to accept the responsibility, but now my life is stable. I'm ready to welcome both you and Anne back into my life. We can be a family and live happily together, never separated again." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So now, you want to take us back to your house? You think we are just some dolls you can pick up and take home? You think you can throw us away when it's convenient and then suddenly claim us when it suits you? I couldn't believe the audacity of his words. No, Hugh, you're not taking us anywhere. We're fine as we are. And already has a father. His name is Huang Deng. He may not be as famous as you, but he's a far better man. He's kind, responsible, and wealthy in ways that matter. He is the father who truly deserves to raise Anne, not someone who ran away when she needed him most. I made sure Hugh heard every word. Don't come here again. I'm done with you. We've moved on with our lives. Huang Deng and I will give Anne everything she deserves. Huang Deng had been quietly listening to my words. He sighed with relief, knowing exactly where he stood in Anne's life. He wasn't just my partner, he was a true father to her. As he got up to clean the house, it was clear he wanted to show Hugh who the real father was. He was determined to prove that he was the man who would care for Anne, not Hugh. Huang Deng, with a smile, grabbed the mop and pushed it toward Hugh. "Move out of the way. I'm cleaning now," he said, with a playful grin. It was funny to me. How did a big company CEO like Huang Deng turn into a housekeeper? But I couldn't help but laugh at his good-natured attempt to lighten the mood. Once he finished cleaning, Huang Deng took Anne into the room to teach her how to colour and practice the alphabet. He sent Hugh away with one final word. "Did you see that, Hugh? Anne already has a real father and there's no place for you here anymore. Don't come back." Hugh stood up to leave, but before he went, he looked at me one last time. "I'm not giving up," he said. "I'll be back tomorrow." The next day, just like he said, Hugh came back to my house. He was sitting at the gate, waiting for us, even though Huang Deng and I had taken Anne out. When we returned, Hugh gave Anne a gift bag and quietly left. Before he left, he told me once again that he would be back the next day. This was getting ridiculous. I had no idea what was going on in his mind anymore. He kept pushing to be a part of Anne's life, even though he had abandoned us for years. If only he had been there for us back then, maybe things could have been different. But now, after all the time I had spent with Huang Deng, my family had found happiness. Hugh's reappearance was a constant source of stress and confusion. He was forcing me into a corner with no regard for my feelings. One evening, as I was about to leave work at the clinic, a woman came in with her sick child. I hesitated because I was supposed to meet Huang Deng for his birthday dinner, but I couldn't turn away a patient in need. I stayed to treat the child, knowing that I had a responsibility to help, just like Huang Deng had helped me and Anne when we needed it most. As I wrapped up the appointment and looked at the mother and child, I felt a sense of calm. This was the life I had now, stable, loving, and full of purpose. It was the life I deserved, and no matter how many times Hugh showed up, it wouldn't change that. I couldn't help but notice how my little patient shared the same name as my own daughter. The only difference was their family name. The coincidence didn't end there. The little one was also 5 years old, just like my daughter. This was the first time I'd ever encountered a young patient with the same name and age as my own child. It left an impression on me, so I decided I would offer this child a free consultation. However, when I examined the little one, I discovered something troubling. I had to stay back, conduct further tests, and carefully evaluate the situation. After several procedures, the result was much worse than I expected. This young child was diagnosed with a brain tumour, specifically a ventricular meningioma. The child was in a dangerous stage, and the prognosis was dire. I immediately completed the medical records and referred the patient to a higher level hospital for further treatment. After transferring the child, I returned home, but something inside me felt heavy. I couldn't shake the thought of that little one. The difficult days ahead for her, the pain she would endure during treatment, the battles she would face, it broke my heart. If it was tough for adults to go through something like that, how could a 5-year-old even begin to comprehend it? I could only hope that she would find the strength to overcome this challenge. The very next day, my husband, Hugh, came over and brought a lot of things for our daughter. I had asked him countless times not to do this, but he insisted. He sat down, determined to play with our daughter, while I sat on the sofa, lost in my thoughts. I was waiting for a call from the sister of the little patient who had promised to update me with the results from the hospital. But as time passed, I had still not received any news. I opened my laptop to review the medical records of the young patient, when Hugh, seeing me deep in thought, came over and poured me a glass of water. As he did, he peered over my shoulder, glancing at the file. "What's this? Why do you look so serious?" he asked. I didn't answer, just sighed deeply. Then he read aloud, "Ventricular meningioma." Is that a brain tumour? I remained silent, my thoughts still consumed with the little girl. But Hugh kept reading, and growing concerned, he asked, "Is our daughter sick? Is she the one with this condition?" I looked at him, somewhat perplexed. "No," I replied, trying to keep calm. "This is the medical record of a patient I saw today, not our daughter." But Hugh, not fully grasping the situation, panicked. "So, it's not our daughter, but this tumour. It's such a dangerous thing. What if she ends up with long-term consequences even after surgery? What are we going to do?" I couldn't help but roll my eyes at his overreaction. "Stop making a scene. We don't have that issue to deal with right now. As for treatment, there are always options if we have money. Money can solve everything, right?" I paused, confused at his reaction. Normally Hugh was very sharp, but today his focus seemed off. He had mistaken the situation entirely. He believed our daughter was the one with the tumour. The reason? He didn't even recognise our daughter's last name, which was different from his. If only he had paid attention to the details, he wouldn't have made such a careless mistake. But I said nothing. I let him continue to stew in his confusion. Eventually he turned back to me asking, "How long has she had this condition? Did you get the test results?" "No," I replied softly. "I've just sent her test samples to a bigger hospital for further testing. We're still waiting." Then he asked again, "So what's the plan?" "What are we going to do?" I sighed. "I'm thinking of taking her abroad for treatment. The medical technology here can't compare to what's available overseas." Hugh looked stunned, unable to process what I was saying. "But how much will that cost?" he stammered. "Are you really planning to take her abroad?" I paused. "Well, that's the only option. It will be expensive, maybe 5 to 10 billion. Can you handle that?" Hugh's eyes widened. 5 to 10 billion? That's insane. How much are you willing to give me for the treatment? You do realise that I'm an actor. And it's not like I have unlimited funds, right? I can only give you 20 million for now. I looked at him, exasperated. 20 million? That's it? You make millions a year and all you can give is 20 million? Are you serious? You should be able to contribute at least 5 billion. This is for the treatment of our daughter after all. Hugh seemed lost, perhaps not realising the gravity of the situation. "How can we even handle the costs of this? What do you expect me to do?" I continued, trying to keep my cool. "Once we take her abroad, you'll need to support her. She'll have to live with the consequences of this condition for the rest of her life. You can't expect me to handle everything alone, especially when the treatment is going to be so costly." Hugh didn't respond, just sat there quietly. I could tell he was struggling. The truth was, I knew he didn't want to be responsible for a sick child, but I couldn't just take all the responsibility on my own. I decided to press the issue further. "Remember when you said you wanted to take her in and raise her? Well, now's your chance. I'm letting you take her home and care for her. I'll take care of the paperwork and send you everything you need for the treatment." He looked shocked. "Wait, you want me to do everything now? But you're the mother. This is your job," I replied. "I've been taking care of her for 5 years. Now it's your turn. You said you wanted to raise her, remember? Well, here's your opportunity. You can take care of her for the next 5 years while I focus on my work." He seemed reluctant. "But I'm so busy. I have things to do, and I can't just quit everything." I didn't back down. "Well, then you have to make a choice. If you want her to get treatment, you need to stop everything for at least a year to focus on her care. It's not optional." He hesitated again, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "But I can't just put my career on hold for a year." I shook my head. "You don't have a choice. Your daughter's health is more important than your work. You need to make sacrifices if you want her to have a chance at survival." I stood up and began packing her things, her clothes, her personal items, everything she might need. "I'm done packing. Take her home, and we'll figure out the details later. I'm giving you the responsibility now." Hugh just sat there, stunned. Wait, you can't be serious. You're rushing me. Yes, I said firmly. I'm serious. If you're too busy to help, then don't bother. But if you want to be a part of her life, you need to step up now. She needs you. The story of Hugh and Quinn. A tale of love, responsibility and redemption. Hugh was absolutely adamant about not taking his daughter with him. His reason? He feared the financial burden of raising a sick child, the cost of medical treatment, ongoing care, and the uncertain future of a child with a severe illness were too overwhelming for him. If his daughter had been healthy, he might have agreed to take her. But with her struggling against a deadly disease with no guarantee of recovery, he saw nothing but difficulty ahead. The reality of caring for a sick child meant significant time and money, resources he just didn't have. As a busy, famous actor, Hugh's career consumed most of his time. It left him little room for family matters, especially one as complicated as this. He looked at the situation, sighed deeply, and began making calculations. "All right," he said, "I'll pick her up tomorrow." I still have work to do today, but I couldn't let him off that easily. I told him, "No, please, take her with you now. I've packed her things already. Just take her now." He hesitated, but then said, "Fine, I'll go." With that, he hurried off. In his rush, he didn't even say goodbye to our daughter as he usually would. I couldn't help but wonder, did he truly believe our daughter was sick? Or was he simply trying to avoid his responsibilities? Was he trying to disappear from our lives for good? An hour later, I tried calling him. His phone was off. The next morning, I called again. No answer. What was going on? Had he truly vanished? Was he running away from the situation altogether, perhaps changing his phone number to avoid me? Days passed, and despite my constant calls, I never heard from Hugh again. He had completely disappeared. It was clear now. The man I once knew had changed, and not for the better. Before I got pregnant with our daughter, Hugh had been a man who had little interest in commitment. He wasn't ready to settle down and had a wandering heart. Despite this, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. After 5 years, when we met again, I thought there might be hope. But once I told him about our daughter and her illness, his true colours showed. Hearing about the severity of our daughter's condition, knowing it would affect her for the rest of her life, he grew terrified. He couldn't bear the thought of raising a sick child, one who might never be healthy again. So once more, he chose to abandon us. I even called his relatives, hoping to get in touch with him, but no one knew where he had gone. Had he truly disappeared without a trace? It seemed so. But I'd made up my mind to move on, and life was moving forward, whether Hugh was part of it or not. As time went on, I met Huang Dung. We grew closer, eventually falling in love. Our relationship was filled with warmth and happiness. He didn't have much family of his own. His parents had passed away when he was young, and he had spent most of his life focused on his career. But when we came together, he embraced me and my daughter as his own. Huang Dung made it clear, "From now on, you and your daughter are my family. I'll take care of both of you. I'll be the father figure she needs, and I'll protect you both with everything I have." We were happy, and that happiness only grew as we moved in together. My daughter thrived in an environment full of love and care, and Huang Dung was there every step of the way, treating her as his own child. Meanwhile, Hugh, my ex-husband, was still caught up in his reckless lifestyle. His career, once full of promise, was now crumbling as he became involved in scandal after scandal. One morning, while I was getting ready for work, Huang Dung turned to me and said, "You won't believe this, but your ex-husband is trending online. He's caught in a scandal." I was curious. "What happened?" Huang Dung chuckled. "Well, it seems Hugh has been involved with a much older woman, and he was caught in a hotel room with her by her husband and kids. They went to his filming set and caused a huge scene. Now, he's the talk of the internet." I laughed bitterly, thinking about how far he had fallen. "I can't believe it! He really is beyond help now, isn't he?" Huang Dung agreed. "His career is practically over. But who knows, maybe in a few years he'll try to make a comeback, hoping people forget the mess he's created. The way he's living now, though, it doesn't look like he'll ever be able to rebuild his life." I was quiet for a moment, reflecting on the state of Hugh's life. "You're right. It's sad. He's made so many mistakes, and now he's paying the price. I honestly don't think he'll ever change. But Huang Dong wasn't finished. You know, there's something else I've been thinking about. When are you going to tell your daughter the truth about her real father? I sighed. I want to wait until she's older. Maybe when she's more mature she'll understand. I don't want to burden her with this now. We'll tell her when the time is right. Huang Dong smiled warmly. I'm not her biological father, but I will love her just like my own. She's my daughter now. I'll always be there for her, no matter what. I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Come on, Rat New Dung. You've given me and my daughter a new chance at happiness. And as Huang Dong held me close, he said, I'll always cherish you both. Together, we've built something beautiful, a family, and we will continue to grow in love forever. Meanwhile, Hugh, my ex-husband, had fallen deeper into the abyss. His acting career was over, and his reputation had been ruined. His once promising future had been destroyed by his own reckless choices. He struggled to make ends meet, even working at a supermarket just to survive. Despite all this, part of me still hoped that one day he would turn his life around. If he truly repented for his past mistakes and lived a better life, maybe, just maybe, I would consider allowing him to have a relationship with our daughter. But that would require him to change, and I wasn't sure that was even possible. Through it all, I've learned so much. Sometimes life doesn't turn out the way we expect. But with love, forgiveness, and the strength to move forward, we can still find happiness. My daughter and I have found that happiness with Huang Dong, and for that, I am forever grateful. The loyalty of a wife is not just about her feelings or character, but also depends greatly on how her husband lives and loves her. If the husband doesn't live with integrity, doesn't show love for his wife and children, and doesn't cherish his family, then he has no right to demand unwavering loyalty and fidelity from his wife. Marriage is about equality, about give and take. Both partners must contribute to the relationship. In today's modern world, the old-fashioned mindset of favouring men over women must be completely eradicated. Don't you think so? Imagine this. A husband who cheats, who flirts with one woman after another, and yet expects his wife to remain faithful to him when he comes home. Is that fair? Let's be honest. There is no way that can work. If the husband constantly criticises his wife and shows no respect for her, then let me make one thing clear. We, as women, also have our own worth. If you take us for granted, you might find yourselves losing everything before you even realise it. So gentlemen, you need to appreciate your wives and your families. If you live with integrity, if you treat your wife and children with love and respect, there will be no reason for doubt or hesitation on the part of your wife. In a happy family, both the husband and wife work together to build happiness. But if one is working to build the relationship while the other is destroying it, the result will always be zero. Dear audience, thank you for listening to episode 2, the final episode of our story series. We hope you enjoyed it and found it meaningful. Please continue to support our channel by subscribing, liking, sharing, and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means the world to us. Thank you so much.